Attention, everyone.
Well, yeah.
I'd like to call to order the July 13th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Roll call, Courtney?
Misty Solovich,
Here.
Sarah Ritchie,
Here.
Al Ferris,
Here.
Aaron Freeberg, Bob Ormsby,
Here.
Jeremy Preble, and Josh Ray.
Here.
All right. Item 3 on the agenda is approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved. I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is public comments. There isn't anyone in the audience, so I don't believe we have any public comments. So we would move on to old business, of which there is none. Number 7 is new business. Item A, consider recommendation on request for approval of a plat of survey for Michael and Marilee Vanderpool located within 2 miles of the city of Indianola. Charlie?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the Vanderpools currently own land on the north side of Highway 92, just outside of town. Matter of fact, 1,000 feet west of the current city limits on the west side of town. They do propose to split off about 7.2 acres for the purpose of allowing an existing business, which is Better Equipment, to expand into that area. Current property is occupied by Better Equipment, and it's approximately 5.3 acres in size. So just for some reference, if this was approved in total, we'd be looking at about 12.5 acres total that business would sit on. This property is not located within the city of Indianola, but again, as it was within 2 miles, the city does have review authority over it. Most of these that we review are outside of any growth area we have in the city. However, this one actually is located in a growth priority area. It is designated on the comprehensive plan as community mixed use, which does include retail, office, restaurants, so on and so forth. Staff's opinion that the proposed use associated with it, the Better Equipment, does meet the comprehensive plan designation. It's also in a medium growth priority area. However, it's our opinion at the same time that the request to add land to this business for the purpose of expansion is not going to hinder any further development in this area. So with that, staff would recommend approval of the plat survey.
Does anyone have any questions about this? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the plat of survey as submitted.
This is Sarah. I'll second.
And then we need to do a roll call vote.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Al Ferris,
Yes.
Bob Ormsby,
Yes.
Josh Ray,
Yes.
Misty Solovich.
Yes.
Could we have a bit of maybe irrelevant follow-up discussion about that? Vetter came in here and asked for us to rezone some property out on Highway 92 East.
They've sold that since then.
Yep, that's been sold. So
But it's zoned commercial, highway commercial.
yes, possibly. I think you might be right on
I
that
was looking at
one.
that a couple
Yes,
months
it
ago.
is.
I guess my question is, do we want it to remain highway commercial, or should we consider seeing if the current owner wants it to be something else?
So I've had a few conversations with the current owner on that one. I don't think there's anything solidified on what they're looking to do, but it seemed to me that it would be they'd be looking at more residential uses out there kind of associated with the entire area. So we can definitely touch base and I can follow up and kind of see what that plan is at this point. But
Well, my thought is that it seems like that area is going residential. Not too far away across from the middle school. There's
Yep.
one, I think,
we just
probably
approved.
does the city council deal with that already? We did, I know, but
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where that is. I think that's,
And
I
then-
know that was completed because they waived their consideration of that. So yeah.
okay. And then you know, across the road north, there's considerable urban development, housing development going on there. And I thought maybe it would be time to get ahead of that so we don't end up with a commercial development in the middle of what's going to be a whole bunch of
Yep.
houses. If the landowner would be willing, I think maybe we ought to, I encourage you to maybe
Okay, yeah, I can reach out.
see
to-
what they
yep.
would think of that idea.
Yep, I can reach out. Like I said, it's been a little while since we had the discussion on that one, on kind of what their proposed use was. So I can follow up and make sure that is the case and see if we can push to possibly get it rezoned back to some sort of residential use.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, B, consider recommendation of the adoption of an ordinance amending the city code of the city of Indianola, Iowa, creating regulations for golf carts.
Yeah, so this one all started kind of when the county, if everybody's aware, Warren County adopted some regulations earlier this year that allowed for ATV golf carts and other uses on county roads. At that point, I think the city council started getting contacted for the city to possibly look at these. So when we were working on the micromobility regulations at that same time, we had asked Snyder and Associates to possibly look at some golf cart regulations that we could possibly adopt. So the draft ordinance that they prepared was included in your packet there. Wanted to note that as we talked through this with council and showed them the proposed draft, and they did ask the Planning and Zoning Commission to review this, they did encourage the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider not just golf carts, but possibly side-by-side ATVs and stuff like that that could possibly be used on city streets as well. So the draft ordinance that we provided only does include golf carts, but just really what we're looking for here, I think, is kind of a discussion on the proposed ordinance. Happy to answer any questions on them. There's a section of state code that does allow for golf carts to be on streets, but there's very specific things. There's a few specific things that we have to follow if we're doing that. One of them being that they are not allowed between sunset and sunrise, that they have to have a safety flag and one of those slow moving vehicle signs on them. And that they're not allowed to be operated on what the state code says, I think, primary streets that go through town, which would be Highway 92 and Highway 65, 69. So the draft that we have, I think, addresses all of those, but just really want to have a discussion and maybe some direction from the Planning and Zoning Commission on these possible regulations. So happy to answer any questions or be involved in a discussion if you want.
So, I don't think it was attached here with the Snyder's review of the ordinance of the other cities. What was the results of that? Did I miss that? Was that in here?
Yeah, no, it was just incorporated in. So the regulations that we have in the ordinance were stuff that was taken out of state code, plus looking at other cities and how they had operated. Those were also put in here.
So right now, these three cities have a
Yes,
regulation for it.
correct.
How
Yes,
did they come up with those three cities, Charlie?
I don't know, but I've top my head on that.
It seemed like an
I-
interesting.
Yeah,
place where you've
I
got
think it-
Eagle Grove, which
yep.
is super tiny, Spencer, which is going backwards, and North Liberty, which is growing,
Mhm.
right? But they're kind of all just a little.
Maybe that was on purpose.
I mean,
Yeah, and I can, if we want to, have further discussions on this, I can find out kind of how they did identify those towns, and maybe it is one of those things is those are just maybe a few of them that are allowed and easy to find. I have no idea.
I felt like that it looked reasonable.
Where would this leave ATVs?
Well, that's my question. Is
Mine too.
we open that floodgate of, let's say we would decide to allow golf carts, then how do you argue against ATVs if somebody comes forward? I mean, it just seems like,
Because there's not an ordinance.
Well,
I'm saying, right, if we allowed this, would people that have ATVs start to push to want to have those legalized?
well, I think it's been a while. I've been retired probably too long. Maybe the law's changed, but I think ATVs equipped with horns, lights, and signal, maybe some other stuff are legal on the roads. So I don't think you could keep them off the city streets if they have that required equipment.
That for sure?
Yeah, I really, and again, information I don't know either. That'd have to be something that we have.
I
to
never
I would
see
certainly
them on
want
city
to, huh?
I never see them on city streets.
Well, I know, but see, okay, my law enforcement officers used to have to deal with ATVs. And one class is if they're implements of husbandry, it's like King's X, they can do whatever they want, okay, on the gravel roads. But if they go on highways, I think they had to have a certain level of equipment that would make them safer and more visible. And so I think it's worth asking what the current law is relative to ATVs, and if they are so equipped, can they go on city streets? And if they're not, should we deal with them some way in here or just say no? You know, I think we need some legal advice on that.
I've been to places that have allowed them. You know, they just go all over the place. They don't seem to follow any regulations. They fly into the ditches and back out onto the streets or roads, and it just, you know, kind of a free-for-all, which that concerns me safety-wise.
Yeah.
I'm not really a proponent of seeing other vehicles be put on the city streets. I mean, the fact there's only 3, supposedly right now, we know of 3 cities that have allowed it in the state.
I guess my impression is that, I guess I know anecdotally, there are lots of communities that people drive them all, and it is allowed.
Golf
That
carts,
aren't
golf
here,
carts.
golf carts specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
In Northeast Iowa, there's tons of little towns, and that's how everyone gets around town.
I would just say, sort of like, it's all I really have to go on, but like golf carts, I read this, my I can wrap my head around that. I've had a lot of experiences from safety.
Yeah.
Generally, they're right, but like you can start talking about ATVs and side by side and stuff like that. I don't know, like those things are just, they're wired different. They're set up to go different, and that I would struggle with quite a bit. You know, I know the roll hazards in a side by side when you're on the dirt and mud that you're supposed to be on, you know, and then you throw it on asphalt, and they have the ability to go 25 or 35 miles an hour. It just seems like in a growing city, busy city, that's I'd be the old guy in my lawn and yelling at them, right?
Well, and they're difficult to see. We still have some intersections that only have 2-way stops and not 4-way. You know, those are just potential dangerous situations, you know, where you can't see something downfall like that. But yeah, I
Bicycles
agree.
are allowed.
Huh?
The bicycles are allowed.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're not going 35 miles an hour.
Some go faster because people modify them too.
Right.
So yeah, that's my thought is kind of back to the horns and the lights and even like turning signals. They're not typically equipped with any of that.
That's right.
No. And they're
That's
not
right.
being asked for. So, you know,
I
what this
really
regulation says
think,
is all hand signals.
I also had a question about it says the persons must possess a valid driver's license. Does that include a learner's permit and school permit?
I would assume on that one, and then maybe that's something we have to really follow up with PD on, but I think it would operate the same as a vehicle, that if you have a learner's permit or school permit, it's the same thing as if you're driving a car with that, you can only use it to and from school. But I don't know if people are parking golf carts at schools either, if they're
Yeah,
taking them.
well,
So,
Used to be mopeds, and
yeah.
somebody will try it. Used to be mopeds.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But again, with mopeds, those had turning signals, lights, horns.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
So Charlie, you referenced golf carts, and obviously all of this does reference that. But earlier, I'm going to go back to what you said. Like, are we generically saying golf carts? Are we specifically saying golf carts? And then the rest of those side by sides, all that would have to be looked at separately.
Yeah. So I think it's worth kind of going through the process on this. We knew this was being discussed, so we had Snyder look at a possible ordinance. When we brought this possible ordinance to council said, hey, we want the planning commission to look at it, but we also want them to consider the side-by-side ATVs. on top of that. So right now, the ordinance as written is only written for golf carts, but the direction when council passed it down was, let's also talk about other types of vehicles that could be included with this that would make sense.
But this is specifically.
Yes. Yeah, and then again, this is, this is a draft ordinance, so we can change wording, language in here pretty easily.
And I guess one thing I'll note is golf carts are regularly driven on the streets of Indianola near the Indianola Country Club.
Yeah, they get away with it.
I-
Yeah, what bothers me is getting into bigger, busier intersections, this ordinance does allow them to cross the highways.
Yeah.
And so you're gonna get a highway intersection crossing with those. I just think of some busy areas like C Street and Howard or Buxton, those areas were prone to accidents, right? People run the stop sign, a lot of traffic. I don't know. It just concerns me. We're getting to be a bigger, small town. A lot more traffic, a lot more condensed. I don't know. It just
And
seems a little. I'm worried about safety of people underage those things.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about that, and first kind of rough drafts that we had, we actually did clarify what streets we wanted these on, but then all of a sudden it was like, well, what about this street? What about this street? So we tried to generalize it as much as we could to say, obviously they're not allowed on 92 and 65 and 69 because state code doesn't allow them. But also if the speed limit is above 35 miles an hour, they're also not allowed there. And we actually played around with that a little bit too. And one of the questions came up was South Y Street, North Y Street. Well, they should be allowed there. There's a golf carts over there. There's people who might be using that area. So that speed limit being 35 miles an hour, we wanted to make sure that they were included as part of that as well.
I think we need some legal advice about the status of ATVs on the streets and what may or may not be. Because I acknowledge my knowledge of the code is 20 years behind.
Nope, and that's totally, we can do that, and we can bring this back to the next meeting as well too, if we want to get that more operation. I don't think there's a huge rush to get this adopted by any means. We want to make sure that's right if we do that. I just, before we do that too, if there's any other sections of this that we want to specifically talk about, be happy to do that as well. But I think I've got a few notes here to kind of figure out how the cities were chosen, and I'll follow up with Snyder on that. Current law relevant to ATVs, and then just if there are other cities, if we can maybe see if they're allowed and whatnot.
It'd be interesting to know maybe the number of accidents they've had with these in these towns. I mean, Port Liberty concerns me most, but I'd be interested to see for sure. Have they had a number of accidents with these things?
Are they planning on repealing this?
Right. Are they reconsidering it because of what they did? Because North Liberty seems kind of a.
Charlie, are we able to ask, like we talked about, they can cross the highways and stuff like that? Can you legally say only at like intersections with traffic lights?
I think we can do that. Yes. Yeah, we could modify that. As I think about that, the only area of concern I would say would be West 92 because there's not a stoplight until you get to Jefferson. Buxton, I guess, has one, but once you get out on that side of town, there's nothing there. So
I mean, maybe that sucks for a few people, but it just seems like the concerns of trying to cross a highway if you're at something with some controlled speeds. That's great.
I guess I just go back to my question. It's okay for bicycles too. And so why do we have such a high standard for golf carts if it was something we would consider for bicycles? I guess what I'm thinking of is I think that there's urban areas, and this, it's our small town that's growing, but using alternative methods of transportation besides the car and having our community be friendly to that, and things that might be perceived as greener forms of transportation, an electric golf cart. I think that's positive. I do understand the safety concerns. But I can see that being something that would be attractive to some people to hop in their golf cart to go to an event on the square. I don't know where they'll park.
Yeah, that's the same question. You're allowed to park in the parking stall, so
but they
Yeah.
could use any of the
So-
public lots.
Something up.
But doing that versus getting in their car, many more vehicles would be able to park if that was the case as well. So I can see that being attractive if it was something that, we had some clear direction on what makes it safe as well. So our goal with this was just to have a discussion and get some more
Yeah.
information.
Yep. I mean, I think it's, if it was ready to go forward and you looked at this and said, nope, looks good, let's add this in, we could send that back to council. But if we're wanting some more information on that, again, no rush on this, so we'll bring it back to your next meeting. And just want to make sure we get it right before we take it forward.
Does anyone else have any other comments or questions?
I did go out of my way to ask, I don't know, 10 or 15 people what they thought of the idea. And most of them didn't have a big problem with it. The one concern was they're not as visible as that. There was concern about, am I going to be able to see them and are they visible? That was, other than that, I didn't get a lot of comments.
And the state code requirement of
The flag.
Slow moving vehicle sign probably helps out with that a little bit. So.
Yeah.
All right.
I think, I wonder if, as we move forward and we start to, there may be brought the future ATVs, right? Is there a criteria, and is it based on the speed of the vehicle that might limit the use of what could be allowed? Don't know if that's a fair criteria, but the faster they are, the more dangerous they might become. So, is there, if we do accept this, is there a certain regulation of, the speed max is such and such?
And ATVs come in a wide range
Oh.
of sizes. I mean, there's the little, basically 2-passenger model up to, with a bed on the back of it. So that's, that's really a wide range.
All right. Item 7C, progress report on the fiscal year 21 community development work plan. Charlie?
Yeah, so I think the commission will recall, obviously we adopted our comprehensive plan last year. Just not too long after that, we adopted the first work plan for last fiscal year, which ended on June 30th. So just wanted to give the commission a quick update on that. You'll recall we identified 26 short-term items, most of which were related to the code update process, which is going to be completed here. Council will have its third consideration of the ordinances implementing that at their next council meeting, and then we hope to have the ordinance officialized on July 28th, so not too long away from having that. But anyways, of the 26 items, we noted that 13 of those were completed and 8 were partially completed, and we'll move those partially completed ones into next year. There were 5 items that were not started, and 4 of those will be carried over to fiscal year 22. And then additionally, there were 3 short-term items that we did not identify, but we did get those completed last year, as well as 3 medium-term actions that were not identified that were completed. So overall, we're on pace, I think, kind of to where we were for those 26 items, and a little bit short on that ones were actually completed, but most of them at least had been started on that. So just really quick update on that. And I think the next item is to look at the next year's work plan. And if there's any questions on what we did last year, we'd have to answer them.
I noticed in several cases, there's however, if other necessary changes are necessary in the subdivision regulations, those changes will not occur until 2022. Is
Yeah.
that just an acknowledgement of time frame?
Yep.
Or?
So the code update process, if you recall, it's a 2-phase process. We did phase 1, and then phase 2 is actually starting now this fiscal year, and the subdivision sign code and all of that stuff. So there was some of these recommendations from the comp plan that were zoning and subdivision. So it's kind of a 2-part thing where you have to make a zoning change, but you also have to make a subdivision change as well
Okay.
too. So it's just acknowledging that, hey, we did the zoning part, we're gonna get the subdivision part next year.
I know this is not your area, but the fiber optic system, I'm wondering about discussions with IMU and the city about having a television channel to broadcast IMU meetings, city council meetings, whatever else the city deems should be broadcast to make it more widely available to people in the community.
Yeah, and I can't give an exact on that. I know it is a priority of IMUs to do that. I think currently it's still being broadcast on that old service. But I know it is a priority. Their main priority, from what we've been told, is to just get the implementation of the system up, and then that will come at a later date. But I can follow up if you need and kind of find out exactly what that timeline is. But I know it is a priority. How big of a priority is at this point, I don't know.
I just think it would be healthy for city government, for more citizens to be able to see what's going on rather than going to the meeting. Personal campaign, I guess.
Item D, adoption of the fiscal year 22 community development work plan.
Yeah, on this one, we're looking at a few new ones to add on this. I'm trying to just pull up my memo here just so I can get my, this. The ongoing category includes 41 total. Just so no, these are the totals, excuse me. I don't have these numbers memorized, so I'm just trying to. Yeah, so staff's focus for this next, or for the last fiscal year, we did complete 16 of the 17 actions on there, and then 3 of the medium. For fiscal year 22, we're working on 12 implementation measures that were identified in fiscal year 21 that we did not complete, and then we'll begin working on 17 new items on the short-term ones, and then 6 medium actions that we've identified as well. So what I've tried to do with this and the short-term ones, we're supposed to get those done in 5 years. We are well on pace to make sure that we get all 77 of those completed within the 5 years, but now starting to sprinkle in a little of those medium term ones as well too. Those are something that we're supposed to be getting done within the next 10 years. So I want to make sure that we're keeping track on those. So a lot of the stuff that we're looking at doing, again, is the continual update of the development codes. But a few things also then tie back to we're going to start looking at the streetscape project progressing and kind of what happens in the square, and trying to kind of implement some of those factors in there about starting the facade program back up, that facade grant program. We just started the budget for this year, began in July 1. So we'll look at now next fiscal year as we start planning for that budget, possibly putting an item in there for council approval to consider. So just things like that, starting up some of the stuff on the square and just making sure when that project is completed that we are now ready to start implementing some of those measures that we hope to do after that project is done. And I would say really quick, hopefully the tables on there all made sense. I tried to kind of color code everything to bring some clarity to it, but again, any questions on that, we have to answer them.
Could you tell us or share with us how you decide which ones to work on?
It just really kind of forecasting what we're going to be working on, and kind of where they fit in overall on kind of just a overall scheme on kind of what we're doing. So, again, a lot of it is we knew we were doing the code updates. We knew those ones were going to be able to come forward first. And as I mentioned with this one, as the streetscape gets completed, that project gets completed on the reconstruction, we can start looking at some of those as well too. So some of it's strategic, and then some of it is kind of just a general kind of idea in my head and kind of how we want to start implementing some of this stuff and kind of when the time is appropriate.
Any other comments or questions on this?
How soon do you think the facade grant program will be put in place?
Intention on that would be to, as we start planning for the the next fiscal year budget would be fiscal year 23 budget. We're starting that process right now. Typically when we get one budget put in place, we start for the next year. So I would imagine July 1st of next year, we'd have some funding put in place, but we'd start working through kind of the policies and procedures for that funding before that. But July 1 of next year would be the date that we would then have the monies available. And all that is subject to council approval.
There's one red box in here. What's the significance of it?
Yeah, I think that was the one where we had said we wanted to start that, and I'm losing my.
It says
Yeah,
adopt
yeah.
a zoning overlay to establish the parkway design
Yep.
guidelines.
So that was the one that we identified that we were going to start this last year, and we didn't start, and I'm not moving it over yet. I think that one, as we talked through it, there was a few things on the transportation side, such as we need to look at updating the road classification system in town. I don't think it's appropriate. I had originally put that one in as part of the zoning discussion that we could do. We did not include that as part of the zoning discussion because there's a few things we need to identify in our road network first before we have that discussion. So that one would get moved to some point in the future, but it was just to show we did identify last year that we would get that one done. We didn't, and we're not moving it to next year because there's other things that need to happen before we get that one.
Okay.
Sorry, I probably should have put somewhat of a legend on there what the colors meant.
Any other comments or questions? All right, we'll move on to. do we
Well, and
have-
I would say on this one too, just if we could get a motion to
Oh,
approve the
wonderful.
work plan on this one, and then
Can I ask one more question? Under housing and neighborhoods, under medium, there's 3 or 4 of them there that are very closely related, and they all relate to ensure the housing stock is safe and attractive. When do you think we're going to get to those? There's 4 of them there that I think are pretty important that deal with existing housing. And
yeah, I mean, didn't identify them this year just because we had a lot of other ones that we were doing. I mean, if you want to add it to this year, we can possibly start doing them. Otherwise,
no, I
can
don't
keep
want to
it.
force you into it. I just
No,
want
no,
to
no,
raise that because I think it's an important thing because it talks about communities, neighborhood, helping financially with existing housing stocks. And as I recall, one of the things that was identified in the comprehensive plan was we have a lot of older housing stock that didn't rate real well, and it seems like sometimes we focus on new and not existing and helping bring existing housing stocks up.
Yeah, and I would say on that one, the vision I would have for that is more of we need to look at kind of identifying what the neighborhoods we have in town, possibly working with some groups within those neighborhoods as well too. You know, not to say we want to be like the city of Des Moines. The city of Des Moines has well-defined neighborhood boundaries.
Yeah.
They've got well-defined neighborhood plans as part of that stuff as well for each neighborhood where they work with those neighborhoods, kind of come up with an action plan for them. I would foresee possibly something similar to that, but it would take some time to kind of go through and outline and a few discussions we'd probably have with the commission on kind of how we want to go about that. But I think it is something that would be a bigger project to do and makes possibly more sense to kind of do once we get past some of the code updates and the square stuff as well. So
Yeah.
I will definitely kind of make a note, and I think when we plan for this a year from today, when we're doing the next work program, to get those included in there, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, I like I live in the old East Side neighborhood. You know, really, I mean, the old houses on the East Side neighborhood as opposed to the new houses on the East Side. And it's fairly obvious, you know, when you drive through that corner city. And I think there's some potential there to establish neighborhood, not standards, but encouragement or pride or something like
I
that.
agree with that.
That those things are aimed at. Just next year.
I will make note.
So we need to make a motion on this?
Yes, if you would please.
Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the, where this, let me get back up the top of my PowerPoint, or my PDF here.
Fiscal year 22 work plan.
I make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022 community development.
I'll second.
We would do a roll call vote.
Al Ferris,
Yes.
Bob Ormsby,
Yes.
Josh Riggs,
Yes.
Missy Solbush,
Yes.
and Sarah Ritchie.
Yes.
Item 8, does anyone have any additional comments? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Take care.